I'm just going to mute myself and turn my video off for a second. We'll wait for a few people to join and then we'll get started.
Okay. Hi, Nico. I see some familiar faces.
Hi there.
Hi,
How
Rui
are
as
you?
well. I'm good. I'm good. Where are you? Where are you, Nico?
I'm at home in Dubai.
In Dubai at home. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. You had classes today or no?
I did. Just jumped out like 45 minutes ago.
Okay, okay. Excellent. What sort of courses are you taking this weekend?
This weekend is global strategy,
All right.
and I have to say it's an awesome course. I like it. I was struggling a lot, or at least a bit with the last course, which was leading for innovation. Seems
Yeah.
like I'm not the big innovator, but the strategy, that's something I find quite interesting. I can identify
Excellent.
with.
Excellent. Who do we have there as well? Who just joined? I see an email address. Not sure about the name.
Hi, Selina. Let me change my name.
Let me change your name.
This is Lynette here.
Oh, Lynette, of course. Yes, yes, yes. I think I've seen you in my courses or I've seen your LinkedIn. You sound very familiar and you look very familiar.
Yes.
Oh,
thank you.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so I've just come in from class with Nico as well.
So I'm going to make it short and sweet for you guys. I've got something really entertaining to finish off the Thursday. Impactful, but entertaining.
Thank you. I appreciate your time for this.
Of course, of course. Who else do we have there? Dan? Yes.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Dan. You're joining from where?
I'm based in London. I'm a year 2 executive MBA.
All right. So you guys are in lockdown, right?
Yeah, it just began today. Yeah, exactly.
4 weeks. Yes, I've been following events across Europe as well as the Atlantic.
Yeah, yeah. It's the second most popular topic after the election, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes.
And where are you based?
You're in
Dubai?
Dubai.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Great.
At the moment, I'm teaching most of my classes virtually.
Very good. I've heard very good things about your classes off colleagues, which is why I joined today.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry, it's always good to have positive feedback. I would be worried if something else would pop up. You never know. It's a never-ending, learning for everybody, including me.
Of course. Well, I've actually just been updating my LinkedIn profile, so it'll be interesting to see if the advice from yourself, have I followed any of it intuitively, or is there something that I can do in addition to my recent amendments? So.
Yes. Okay.
Should we get started? Shall I do my little introduction? So thank you everybody for joining, and there may be some people that kind of join a few minutes late, but I think let's get started. This webinar is going to be recorded. I'm Jacqueline Allen. I'm one of the career advisors on the PG campus in London, and just thank you so much to Dr. Selina Neri for running this session on interviewing excellence. Well, for the evening in Dubai, for the afternoon in London. So over to you, Selina. And if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat function, and then we can chat through those at the end, or just unmute yourselves, either or. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just, I hope I clean my desktop for you guys, because as you see, I haven't, just a moment. I need to get to my deck. Here it is. So I have prepared, I was saying briefly to one of you that I have prepared something really short and sweet, but at the same time impactful. Those of you who have been in my classes probably know I am a woman of impact. I intend to be, as I think this serves us and all of our students really well. Now, the art of interviewing is an interesting one. And after all the efforts we put in to eventually land an interview if we are looking for a job, or arrange interviews if we have positions available and we are looking for people, it's really interesting to see that studies indicate that we fundamentally suck at interviewing. That's an overall opening statement. We human beings appear to be not very good at interviewing. So let's discover a few things this evening, this late afternoon, that are, I think, important to keep in mind. So we're going to look at how to become an interview pro in the preparation of it, which is really important, once we are in the flow of the interview, as well as with follow-ups. And then I have a few words, I hope, of wisdom to share concerning what is called personal branding. I personally prefer the expression personal reputation, because branding is something that apply to human being just doesn't sit very well in my mind. So I always recommend personal reputation, which is a much bigger concept. Why did I choose the picture of Einstein? Now, there is always a reason behind what we do. And in this particular case, Einstein always said that it's not that he really was so smart or so intelligent. Now, evidently, we know he was, but he thought of himself, it's just that I stay with problems longer. I stay with problems longer. And now we turn this around. I stay with interviews longer, because the rule of the game at the nirvana of everything we are learning tonight is exactly that. Those who happen to be good at interviews are those who really stick with them long, in the preparation, in the flow, and in the follow-up. And they are exceptions, because as I said at the beginning, most of us suck at interviewing. So it's an art, and the better we get at it, the more we stand out. And that's, at the end of the day, the goal of the game. So let's talk a little bit about preparation, and I hope you guys are gonna, go with the flow with me, because I tend to be very practical and very direct in the examples I give, because I think they serve you best. Now, it's probably well known that we should prepare for an interview, right? It's not rocket science. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen very often, but let's look into what it means to prepare for an interview, because there are two levels of preparation. One is probably familiar to you. The second one, not so much. So what do we need to research like crazy? Well, we need to research the industry of the company or companies or organizations we are going into. And evidently, if it is a government entity, we got to research the country and what that particular government is doing. The ecosystem, especially you guys have taken strategy courses, you probably talk about ecosystems as well. So who are the players around the industry and around that particular company, not only competitors, suppliers, partners, all kinds of the ecosystem of entities around it. The company, evidently, easier said than done. If it is a listed company, we have access to information because it is disclosed. If it is a private company, we got to look a little bit more into creative ways of finding information. So finding insiders that help us to navigate the information we are looking for, or otherwise researching, even at times buying pieces of ad hoc research on the company we are going to meet. Really important as well is to research who are the investors in this entity. Why it is important? Because investors are a force that is profoundly impacting the day-to-day business as well as the governance of corporations and companies. If it is a family business, who's the family behind it? What are the sagas that this family is going through? If it is a listed company, I need to know, do they have a BlackRock in their shareholding? Do they have a pension fund? You know, let's think about CalPERS in the United States is one of the biggest, because this will tell us the sort of pressure that the management and the leadership of this company is under in the day-to-day of their operations. And this is important because it helps us to understand context, but also the people, who is who in that organization beyond the ones we are going to be meeting in the interview. This is important because very often, you probably know I'm one of the 10 career advisors at HALT across our campuses. And I hear over and over and over students telling me, but I really didn't prepare. I didn't know who I was going to meet. Well, it's our duty to ask the questions. Whom am I going to meet? Is it the person from HR? Is it the business owner? Is this the right hand, the PA, or of the CEO? It is important to know with whom we are going to have a conversation. Why? Because an interview is a conversation between adults. It isn't an interrogation. And that's already a very important philosophical approach to the art of interviewing. But I have news for you. There is a second layer of preparation that a few years ago, we couldn't care less about it, but now we gotta care about it, and that is the world around us. So for instance, and this is stuff, everything I'm sharing with you guys is stuff that I have personally been involved in. What do you think of recent events in Poland? This is a question that has been asked recently, meaning Poland has just is going actually, as we speak, through a massive wave of protest vis-a-vis abortion rights. So the question of what do you think of recent event in Poland might look like not being very pertinent if I am applying for a job in tech based in South Africa. In reality, if one of my markets in terms of customers is Poland, and all of this is happening, I've got to be very concerned that there can be riots, there can be consumer sentiment that is shifting. I need to know what is happening, and I need to be prepared to receive such a question in the interview. But also, let's look at Hong Kong and the recent wave of arrests, because there is a security crackdown on the part of China on Hong Kong. So one of the questions that I have asked very recently as I was interviewing people for my corporate activity was, will events in Hong Kong affect consumer sentiment? What do you think? Now, it is clear that nobody has the crystal ball to look into, will this have an effect on consumer sentiment? But what the interviewer is asking with these questions is, are you really a citizen of the world? Are you on top of the important news of the world around us? And not only are you on top of them, but are you able to connect the dots? Why is this relevant for our business? Why could this be a risk for our operation, or for how we appear in the press, or for the sort of campaigns we can run in and outside Hong Kong? Another interesting question is, have you been following recent events in Korea? We had the passing of the patriarch of Samsung, and this has created shockwaves in terms of the discussions around one of the biggest issues in large family businesses. So the second question that would come is, what do you think are the succession challenges of large family businesses? Now, you could be interviewing for a position that has nothing to do with being a family business, could be a listed company, could be a startup with a bunch of private equity investors behind it. But where is this going? Where all of these questions, which we are looking at prep for interviews, are pointing to one direction and one direction only, which is, are you able to think broadly before we come to the details of your specific competencies and the specific roles we are interviewing you for? There is a layer, and that's why you guys are studying for an executive master of business administration, which is a qualification in general management. So we got to be able to show that we are not only capable of general management, but also capable of understanding the signals of the world around us. The next question on the menu for tonight that I thought was very important to share concerns one of the biggest topics of the moment, apart from the US election, which is data privacy. And in particular, the regulation or the deregulation of big tech. So a question that is recurring in interviews is, do you think we are doing enough for data privacy? Now, if I am interviewing with a company and this company is asking me, do you think I'm doing enough for data privacy? Probably the answer should start, you should start by saying, well, you're doing enough because I wasn't able to find out much about how you treat data, because this is not supposed to be a public information other than what you show to consumers. But where the questions is going is clearly vis-a-vis the bigger topic of who should own all the data that we collect through the web. And this is a problem every company has on the table, every regulator has on the table, and it's one of those big questions that tells a lot about the ethics of the candidate coming for an interview. And even if that specific role might not necessarily deal with issues of data privacy, I have to show, because you guys are in senior positions, so you're going to look for senior positions in terms of interviews. The game is about showing that you have enough understanding of the severity of the issues that we are facing vis-a-vis data privacy and the ownership of web data. With this question, an interviewer is also opening the door for an adult-to-adult conversation. They are genuinely interested in your view, because you are supposed to have a point of view on this specific topic, even if you might not care much about the technicalities of it. It's about the philosophy of who should own data. There's a big discussion, not only in terms of consumer data, but also in terms of our own health data, traffic data, mobile data, etc., etc. Next question of the world around us is, particularly, but not only for those who live in the Middle East, what do you think of the historic deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates that has been signed a few weeks ago? And this is an important question for two reasons. There is a political element to it. Interviews for positions that are senior, interviewers are looking for an understanding of the politics that impact business, but there is also a less political and more strictly business oriented type of questioning around this topic, because this deal is perceived in the press to be first and foremost a business deal. A business deal that helps to open up a market, Israel, so far closed to the rest of the Gulf and to many other countries in the world, and a positioning of the United Arab Emirates as a leader in innovation. At the moment, the tiny Emirates where I'm sitting ranks 22nd in a list of 130 countries in terms of Global Innovation Index. And it's the only and first Arab country in that list. So it is quite strategic that all of a sudden there is a reunification of the business interest between these two countries. And it has positive repercussions in other industries beyond software technology and clearly financial services and oil. Moving on, preparation for interviews also is geared towards a testing of, does the candidate have general business acumen? And this, guys, is very important, because most of my students are always very concerned about being enough deep in their own functional area. I am a supply chain specialist. I'm worried I don't know enough about supply chain. I always say that don't worry about that. I'm more worried that you actually feel confident with general business acumen, which is part of what we deliver with an executive MBA. Why is this important? Because corporations and governments need people who connect the dots, need people who understand the bigger picture of the businesses they're going into. So if I am interviewing for a marketing position and I excel at my marketing gig in the interview, but I fail in showing that I understand finance, that I understand recruitment, that I understand data security, that I understand market entry strategy, then I am showing I lack general business acumen. And how on earth would a company offer me a job, particularly if I am in a middle to senior management position, given that general business acumen is what allows me to understand the bigger picture and the consequences of decisions beyond my little bubble, so to speak. So having said that, general acumen type of questions take the form, for instance, of what do you think are the opportunities for our company in the circular economy? Boom, a question like this. Now, if I never heard about the circular economy, I probably haven't done my MBA at all, because we do follow and teach quite a lot around these new topics. But an interview with this question, and therefore the preparation for such a question that will come at some stage, it can be circular economy, it can be fintech, it can be sustainability or the climate crisis, again, is geared towards understanding whether the candidate is a citizen of the world in business terms. And you might not know exactly what the company can do in the circular economy, but you need to know enough at the surface to understand the circularity is built around circular design. It's not just recycling of stuff. It's a completely different way of looking at business models. So if you don't know much about the circular economy, you might know a lot about strategy, and therefore you can pivot the question in terms of what you feel more comfortable discussing. Another type of question that happens very often in listed companies is, what do you think of our share price? And you look at the interview and say, not sure, I haven't looked at the share price recently. And this is an issue, because if you're interviewing for a listed company, you gotta have an understanding of how they are performing in the stock markets where they're listed. There might be more than one. Once again, why? Because this gives an indication that we are broad thinkers, that even though we don't go deep in everything, we do understand the ABC of running a business, and particularly running a business globally. So really important. Last but not least, the topic of ethics. Ethics is one of the rampant topics in business today. Used to be a nice to have. Today is fundamental to the purpose of corporations. And companies are struggling to understand where ethics should sit in terms of ownership, because it sits at the end with everyone in an organization. But there are some who choose to place it under the legal department, others create an ad hoc function, others have it in compliance. So the topic of where do you think ethics should sit is quite an important one in terms of understanding if I can play around in my mind in an interview with, well, I can see this happening in these companies. They're going into the general counsel is in charge of ethics. Other companies, and here are the names, they have a different approach and they have created a chief ethics officer. I looked up your structure and I see that you do have a team of compliance and ethics. However, it's sitting under finance. So let me ask you, why did you choose this particular structure? And this is how we spin and we pivot the interview around to our own eventually advantage. Sorry guys, a second, but I have a cold and I need to. Thank you. Moving on, let's now that we have prepared ourselves with the broad and particular questions that can come to us, and again, questions about business acumen generalist, questions around the world we live in, and questions around what is happening on the global stage, not only in the specific of our particular company. You have to excuse me, but I wanted to include in today's webinar a few minutes of things that I have seen over and over and over before COVID and during COVID in terms of dressing the part. This is always part also of the preparation. Now, although I haven't seen these two pictures live in an interview, I have seen the news reports enough examples telling us that we probably are not getting the preparation part of dressing the part right, and why it is important. This is a picture of a journalist in a Zoom call, in what he shows and what he really is. Now, let's take this with a pinch of salt. We are all in our own home environment, and some of us struggle with space, struggle with a quiet angle or corner better, where we can have a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams type of meeting. However, if we are preparing for an interview and we cannot physically leave the space where we are at the moment, then I strongly recommend that we don't dress from the waist up, we properly dress. Why? Because research tells us that when we dress the part, we perform better. So if you might have been taking online courses where you were presentable from the waist up, if you are doing an interview for a job, I do recommend you don't do that, but you properly dress up like if you would leave your home, take the tube or drive your car or take a flight and go somewhere. It is important because it gives you confidence. And it also helps us to perform more professionally, despite the fact that we are in an environment that might not be the office or might not be geared up for an interview type of situation. We've also seen this, which went viral on CNN, because this is a journalist, this poor lady who is seriously dealing with issues of space, and eventually showed up on CNN on a breaking news developing story in this way. And although we all sympathize with the situation she's handling, she's evidently, she has kids at home, not a lot of space around her, checking for light, natural light. If this was to be an interview, you wouldn't perform really well. The reason being that the environment around you is too messy and you are not dressed up for an interview. So therefore, the feeling of being professional is missing, because as a human being, we need to feel in a certain way to also look the part, right? So attention to this. 2 words of wisdom from the experience that I have gathered through my students and also in my long career in corporate life, because I am 52 years old at the end of the day. Number 1, please dress the part and keep it classy. We are not going for a nightclub, but we are going for an interview. It seems evident, self-evident, and I'm not talking to kids, I am talking to fellow professionals. However, we see over and over the problem of candidates that go into an interview through video or in person, and they are not dressed appropriately. In a country like the one I'm living in some Asian countries, in some African countries, this showing up in an attire that is not proper for the occasion would actually create quite a lot of resentment in terms of offending the culture and the customs of the place. In terms of men, please keep it simple and please keep it elegant. Now, I have students who always come to me and say, yeah, but Selina, or they call me Prof or Dr. Selina, but you can all call me Selina. If I'm going for a job in Silicon Valley, I'm not going to dress up with a tie and a suit. And I said, really? Just because you saw, the internship of Google, the film, the movie a few years ago, don't think that everybody's going with sneaker and jeans. And maybe some developers, and maybe once they got the job. But the fact that there is a code of conduct and attire in an industry doesn't mean that immediately you have to, throw all your suits out of the window and buy a pair of sneakers and jeans and a white t-shirt and off you go. Once you are in, you need to see the type of job you've got and the type of contacts you have, and we come to that at the end, the personal reputation you want to build, right? It is clear that if I am going for a banking job there is a certain attire that is expected of people working in a bank. And if I am going to interview at Chanel, I need to be dressed in a certain way which speaks of the codes of the brand Chanel. And if I am going to interview for Amazon, there is yet again another type of attire. So how do I discover this? I discovered this by fundamentally doing my research. Jacqueline, I'm just checking one moment the chat because I'm not sure I can see everything. Let me just see one moment, guys, the questions. Pitch book for startup, this is done. You can also use, yes, for listed companies, absolutely, that's an excellent source. By the way, guys, as long as you are in HALT, you also have access to a number of databases through our library that are quite you can send me an email and I send you the specific links that give you an interesting set of information, really latest and greatest on company. This is a paid service. It's part of the Financial Times group. Although we do not have a subscription to the FT, we do subscribe to these services. So that's an important one. Lynette, you're asking, given the most of the world questions are around politics and very sensitive, how much of the political aspect can you share? Yes, great question. You don't enter a political debate. So an interviewer should never ask you, could you vote for Biden or Trump? Just to be very clear. And if because this already tells me something about the interviewer, he or she is entering a political debate, which should not be part of an interview. However, the smart way to answer is to say very openly, I prefer to remain outside of this political debate because I do not think it is appropriate or specific, conducive to the goal of this interview. So you can call yourself out. It's the same when we enter in certain countries, people speak very openly about their private life. You know, an interviewer can ask you, are you married? Do you want to marry? Do you have children? Do you intend to have children? Are you divorced? In other countries, legally, they could never ask it. And also socially, in terms of social norms, you would never ask the question. So if it is a political sensitive topic, stay on the surface and don't enter in a discussion that you don't feel comfortable having, because you don't know what is the hidden agenda of that particular person, right? Lynette is also asking, is there something like overdressing the part? Yes, overdressing the part exists. And it is very easy to the eye of a smart in terms of experienced interviewer to immediately recognize this is an overkill. You don't want that. Simplicity is the norm, and keep it classy. By classy, I don't mean old. I simply mean keep it elegant and simple until you really know the codes of that particular organization, the colors they use, the scent of the place, how the people dress, particularly at the C-level. If you don't know this, you stay neutral, yeah? Don't wear a wedding dress yet, most probably. That would be a good one. So let's keep going. Attention, ladies, on this live webinar and all the ones who will view this recording, please keep closed shoes on. No flip-flops, no sandals. Why? The general rule is the more bare skin we show, the more we direct attention away from our brain. We don't want this, yeah? Again, we are not going for a high party or nightclub. We're going for an interview. This is important, particularly in countries with a hot climate, where very often, you know, our feet are out because it's hot and we you know, it's like summertime in the UK. You don't see people wearing closed shoes because everybody's waiting for summertime to wear sandals, right? However, it is really important in interviews not to show up with the open shoes. For women, clearly for men, I take it for granted, because they distract. You don't want an interviewer to sit next to you, or even on a Zoom. Imagine, you know, I have a Zoom and you can see all of me and I have my feet out. He or she would immediately pay attention to my feet and not to my head, which is what in reality I want them to buy, is my intelligence, right? As far as men, you choose the color, but keep it simple. even if, at times we have students, particularly the MIBs, who go out with some professors to buy an outfit for an interview, and it's a fantastic human experience. And we always recommend, keep it simple. Don't go for fancy, particularly when you don't know the company yet very well. Now, because we live in the Zoom world, there are also a couple of things that I wanted to share with you concerning dressing the part in the world of Zoom. And I just came this morning, I hosted a corporate training for Ashridge Executive Education for a large bank here in the UAE. And I had around 200 bankers on this corporate training. And we were all not on Zoom or on another platform. So it's important that I share with you a few tips and tricks, which once again this morning became very useful. Number one, if you know this already, please simply bear with me. I say it one more time because it's really important. I am looking at you by looking at the camera on my computer. I'm not looking down at the slides or on the corner at myself, because I know myself, I don't need to look at myself on Zoom. Set the camera at eye level. I don't care how many books you have to put under your laptop or what sort of pyramid you're building, but set it at eye level. Why? It should be at the same height of your gaze, right? So that you give the impression you are a pro in interviewing through technology and using screens and not doing it face-to-face. If you were face-to-face, you would look a person in the eye and you would keep eye contact all the time. Same is through Zoom. Number two, look up at the camera, not down. And by looking up and not down, we get the CNN look, the BBC look, the newscaster type of effect. Although this guy is clearly not dressed for an interview and his laptop is too low, you see where his eye gaze is, eye level? That's where the computer should be. But also really important, once again, is very human that we get distracted by images on the screen. We also can get distracted by our phone or whatever. Make sure everything is on silent and make sure you don't get distracted. You keep looking at the camera. Why? Because an interviewer that catches you with your eyes down or looking at yourself to say, is my hair okay? Immediately will feel you're not professional, you're not a pro, and you don't know how to handle an interview through Zoom. Why is this important? Beyond the interview, because for the next foreseeable future, we do business via Zoom, which means if I put you in a position and you have responsibility for customers or clients or supplier, you're gonna run business on Zoom. And I don't want you to behave exactly in the way you behave with me in an interview, right? So that's always what is going on in an interviewer mind. Now, let's talk for a moment about the Zoom background, the virtual background, which is an amazing, simple discovery of technology. However, in interviews, it is really important we don't overdo it. It's kind of like the attire. So please keep it very simple and very appropriate. If I'm going to interview for a job as a lawyer or in a library or in some form of job in the city of London where I can see good architecture, or in the middle of New York City, eventually after the pandemic, then I could choose one of these backgrounds that makes me look professional. If, unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of having a part of my home or my flat or wherever I live that looks like that, I can make it look like that. But keep it appropriate to the type of interview and the type of company or entity you're interviewing with. Moving on, let me just do a check of questions before we move on to It Happened at HALT. Who do we have in the chat here? Lynette, thank you for answering. Yes. So here I'm going to share with you a couple of things first that have happened at HALT so that we try not to make them happen during an interview. Number one, Over the course of the last, we have been in lockdown more or less since March. I, like many of my colleagues, have been teaching online, and you guys have been taking, most of you, a combination of online, offline, or online and in person, so to speak, but many of us only online. We had students driving their car while on Zoom taking a course. We had students on a balcony on Zoom while taking a course. We had students smoking cigarettes, cigars, as well as electronic cigarettes while on a balcony, while on Zoom taking a course. But last but not least, we had students drinking a fantastic cocktail while they were on Zoom in a course. Now, clearly, these cases have been managed, reported, because it's a profound violation of the code of honor and code of conduct if you are a member of the whole community. But what is this behavior telling us? If you can do it while you're taking a course, chances are you will do the same when you are interviewing. And you might tell me, no, when we are interviewing, we are paying more attention. And I will tell you, not really, because an executive MBA is an important investment of time and money. And you know what I'm talking about. So if I slip into this behavior when I'm taking a course for my future, I most probably will think it's okay in doing it also during an interview. And evidently it isn't. So what happens now when we are moving from the preparation type of questions, attire, and behavior in the flow of the interview? We are there, we are in the moment. Number one, look confident and behave with confidence without being arrogant. Why is this important? If I don't believe I get the job, who will? Simple question. So I know that here personality plays an important role. Some of us feel more confident with ourselves and with the surroundings we happen to be in. So we also tend to perform better. However, we also have many people who slip into the arrogance mode because they are overconfident. I'm not asking anybody to be overconfident because these people are short-lived in terms of interview follow-ups. What is important is that we project confidence. Even if you don't feel it in the moment, you gotta project it, because this creates an instant impact in the mind of the interviewer that you look the part, you play the part, you speak the part, and you look in terms of looking at them as a professional. People smell blood. Therefore, hold your ground. Own your space. If it is a Zoom call, own that call from the beginning to the end. And this goes, we come into a moment also with questioning them, not only being questioned. Most importantly, play the part. Believe that you get the role. Now, there is a fundamental difference between men and women on this particular aspect. Men believe they will get it most of the time, even when CV-wise, they are at 30% of all the requirements for a role. We women, even if we have a 120%, we meet all the aspects of the job, we never feel we are the appropriate candidate, the best candidate for the role. And this is where personality plays an important role. And those of us who don't feel personality-wise to be able to play the part and feel confident, at least let's do it for those 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever the duration of the interview. And then once we finish, we will be exhausted. However, we will have performed and left an impression of being professional, because this is at the end of the game. That's what the game is all about. But last but not least, when we speak during an interview, we hear very often, they did that, or we did this, right? They meaning the company, and we meaning all of us. This shows lack of responsibility, accountability, and ownership. So avoid that. Catch yourself in using these pronouns and use I. I did this. I approached the issue. I raised the flag, right? And when you say they, meaning the company, it's okay if it is a past employer. But if it is a current employer, don't use they, it's I and or us. Now, attention guys, when you are under an employment contract and you are interviewing for a different role outside that company, you are supposed to keep information confidential of your current employer. So there are also interviewers, and I use this trick as well to test candidates. I would throw a question at you asking, you guys, let's imagine you're working for Amazon and I am Alibaba. And I'm asking you, oh, I heard you guys recently implemented a new system on cybersecurity. Isn't that the case? So we throw these little questions around the existing reality and job and company of the candidate, to not because we want to dig. We want to see whether the candidate shares confidential information or not. So what is the game here is, of course, to catch the intention of the interviewer and say, oh, wait a second, this guy or this woman is asking me to share confidential information. And the answer should be, I am under NDA, or I am not at liberty of disclosing this information. It is confidential and this it is protected by my employment contract. Why? Because this will tell the interviewer you behave ethically. And next time you work for me and someone else is asking the same question, you will protect the company information and the company reputation. So attention to this type of questions. Let's come to the moment of questioning. So normally students tell me, and even professionals who have finished their EMBA, so alumni, well, I have no idea of the questions they're going to ask. So, you know, how can I prepare? I can do a general overview of things. Well, in reality, guys, interviewers look for evidence all the time. So please, let's try to avoid the rambling on. Come to the point and come to the point quickly. It's an art and it's part of a general management qualification, an EMBA, to be able to come to the point and remain factual, meaning unemotional about things. I can show my passion for a job, my passion for an industry, my passion for a cause. All of this is very positive in an interview. But if the interviewer is asking me questions, they are looking for evidence, right? They are looking for evidence. I've got to give them evidence. So those who keep talking and an answer lasts an hour when the question was, you know, could have been dealt with in 1 minute, are rambling on. You might have an interviewer who listens to you. So you go out, you fly out of the door after an hour. You might have someone like me who will not pay 1 hour of attention and we simply stop the interview there and then. So attention to this. Now, some of the questions that tend to be asked, because another thing in the industry of interviews is that interviewers tend to ask a pattern of questions, right? So you have a set that will be different every time, but we have a core that is always the same. What will you do in your first 90 days? We need to have an answer. These are easy ones to prepare. The second one is, what is the most difficult thing you had to do? And does anybody have an idea of the typical answer to this question? Anybody who wishes to share with us? What do candidates normally answer to this question? What is the most difficult thing you ever had to do? Any idea? No? Well, the answer is normally firing people. So in positions where you have responsibility for people management, hiring and fire, direct line of responsibility, the answer to the question is normally firing, right? Well, in reality, hiring is as difficult as firing. So be creative in terms of difficulties that you want to share and be prepared with the details, of course, in confidentiality. The number 3 type of question is 3 words to describe you. Seems an easy one. It's really difficult. I remember the first time I was asked the 3 words to describe me, I had to think long and hard. And now, of course, I have my 3 words, but guess what? They change over time. because the way I look at myself changes, because I am myself someone who is always learning. So I learn new things and new areas in my domain of research. So my 3 words always change. So be ready, because you can't take time during an interview for answers. You need to have them there straight. The next one is, how would your boss describe you in 3 words, which says a lot about how you perceive, your boss perceives you. And it's an important one because it tells the interviewer the type of relationship you have with your direct manager. It could be your chair, if you are the CEO yourself, could be your CEO, could be your supervisor at, at whatever level you are in an organization. So be ready with this as well. But also, give me examples, not when you failed, where a project you were handling failed, and what did you do? Now, if an interviewer asks you, give me examples, please, when you failed, you should have a red light pop, pop, pop going on in your mind, because this is the wrong question. It starts to become a little bit personal. We never talk about your failures as a person. We talk about objectivity, a project, something, an initiative, a change initiative that you were handling directly, where that unfortunately don't work out very well. Yeah. So if an interviewer is asking about your personal failure, you failed, I would begin to question whether I actually want to work in that company, because this interviewer is like the window of a shop of that company, and I might not feel very confident with that type of question. What else? Why should we pick you? And this goes back to describe yourself in 3 words. If I don't feel confident that I am the best pick for the job, I won't be able to answer this question. Because going back to my CV, oh, well, I'm very experienced. I really, really have dedicated a long time to studying this and that. I know it because I've read your CV. I followed you on LinkedIn. I have asked people around. I've done the digital due diligence on you. So we know all of that. So what an interviewer is asking for is, give me your profound purpose why you should be our pick. And this pitch is the most profound and impactful of the whole interview, because this is when you have the real chance of having the interviewer there and then deciding for you. If you are able to articulate the reason why they should pick you, what is unique about you. Don't tell me you're a great project manager. I can find 1,000. Don't tell me you're a great leader. There are many. In reality, most suck anyway, but let's imagine there are many. These are general statements. What an interviewer wants to know is, what is the unique selling point of you, Selina, right? Of you, Dan, or of you, Andrew. What is your USP? And we need to be able to articulate it. At some point, however, guys, attention on this webinar, the killer question comes. It's coming, let's be ready and let's be prepared. And the killer question is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Now, you might sit there and say, that's an old one. Well, that's a very modern one as well, because we keep asking it, and we gotta have answers for it. Now, this is gonna be very funny. First of all, strengths are normally easy. Weaknesses are the killer. We all struggle with weaknesses. Why? Because we don't want to let the guard down. And if I start talking about my weaknesses, I've got many, by the way, I immediately feel that I am affecting the image I am trying to build in the whole preparation of the interview, in the flow of the interview. And then you ask me my weaknesses, it's like, you know, I'm laying out for you bare on the table my weak points. And we think that the strengths are easy. So let's see, take 2, it happened not at HALT, but it happened to me, Selina, as an interviewer. Recently, I had someone who I interviewed who told me that her weakness was, I am disorganized and I lack focus. She was interviewing for a project management position. Now, I got relatively worried, right? Because even if you are, you kind of like don't want to say it in my face. Do you think I chose this lady? Probably not. Then I had someone who very openly said, My weakness is that I have a problem with time, doctor. I need to tell you, I'm always late. Now, really? Do you want me to select you for a job when you are telling me you are an adult, you're not 15 years old, that you got a problem with time? So I need to take the responsibility to teach you how to come to the office or to be on time on Zoom calls with clients, with shareholders, with bankers, etc. Probably not. I also had someone who told me, I like to work alone. Well, in itself is not a weakness, right? However, he also added, but I am a great team player. So this one was a killer. I felt really, really bad for this guy because he was so honest in telling me I really love to work by myself. And he was really, I could see he was the type of person who excels at being alone in his little corner, really, really genius type of intellect. However, there aren't very few jobs, there are many jobs in the world where you can work in your little corner. And at some stage, we all depend on each other. And he was also so honest in sharing, well, I am a great team player anyway. So that made, big question mark in my mind. But this is a real killer. I had a gentleman a couple of weeks ago who told me on Zoom, doctor, I need to tell you, I love gorgeous women. Do you think it's a problem? Do you think it's a weakness? And he was talking to me. I mean, I don't consider myself a gorgeous woman, but I think I've got something to offer to the world. So number one, I wanted to say, you're probably asking the wrong person. But number two, given that diversity also means gender diversity, as well as religious background, ethnicity, culture, education, and upbringing, probably not the right guy to bring into a team where I would feel to expose a certain behavior of this guy walking around virtually or physically and recognizing that, admitting that he loves gorgeous women. I don't have a problem with that in your own life, but in a work environment, particularly in this part of the world, might be quite difficult to integrate. But let's look at the positive side of how to spin and pivot a weakness. I had once a young lady who told me, I love technology, I really do. But I do believe that it freaks out. It makes, many clients are intimidated. And boom, that was the cue for me to understand she gets it. She understands that although she loves the intricacies of technology, she understands that customers are intimidated, and very often leaders, senior leaders, are intimidated by technology. Therefore, she has the emotional intelligence to understand and empathize with these clients, and therefore help them to embrace a technological, for instance, a digital turnaround or a transformation. Yes, also another way of spinning some sort of weaknesses into the positive is, for instance, and this is very, is a good trick for sales and marketing roles. I'm very driven. It's not everyone's cup of tea, which is very different than saying, oh, I'm very ambitious, because saying I'm ambitious, although it's something I personally respect when people say I'm ambitious, they tend very often to have a slight disregard for everybody around them, right? It's much better to spin it. The concept is the same. We're pivoting differently in saying I'm actually very driven. I do recognize that, which is positive. I want driven people in what I do, but I want people who also understand that might create a pressure point, a tension with colleagues. And being aware of this is what is needed for integrating high performers who tend to be highly driven with those who are not as driven, but also perform very well, because there's personality issues at play in this as well. Moving on, it's important to approach an interview as a conversation. Therefore, and this is also something that we need to clear the air on this webinar, because very often we feel that the only person who can ask questions is the interviewer. No. From the first moment the interview starts, you have not only the right, the duty to yourself and to the interviewer to show you are a professional, and therefore you start asking questions. Now, The questions need to be intelligent, they need to be eloquent and articulated in such a way that you show you have done your homework. We go back to research like crazy. So for instance, a good question at the outset is to ask, is to put the interviewer in the spotlight before they put you in the spotlight, and ask, this particular area, let's say they are asking you to come in for a transformation, there's a spin-off, a new market entry, we are launching a new product, we are building a digital team, I have a new distribution network, whatever it is. This area, is it critical for you or for the whole company? Meaning, is this a political game, guys? And I'm gonna be, you know, in the middle of a fire, the type of guerrilla every day, or is it a strategic area for the whole company? This is important. I went years ago into a company in Europe as the VP of professional services, and it was a completely toxic environment, which they wanted me to clean and clear the air, so to speak. And eventually, I had to handle the transformation of the whole group, and many employees lost their jobs. Now, it was very important for me in that first interview of 5 interviews I had to be very clear about, is this a game you guys are playing and you want me to come and help you? Meaning, at some point, I'm going to caught up in the politics, and either I play them to my advantage and I disregard my personal moral compass, or otherwise I'm not going to succeed. Or is this a profound transformation the company stands for and is behind, because then they will have my back. You see the difference, yeah? So that's one question. The second one, what's the plan for this particular piece of business we are discussing for the next 12 months? Now, I recently had an alumni from London who is still doing with me some sessions until the end of November. And she asked this question for a top position in IT, and the answer was, we don't have a plan. And she said, okay, you know, I was very shocked when they told me. I said, don't be shocked. Most companies don't have plans. You know, we teach about planning, but in reality, a lot of stuff happens, you know, on the fly, so to speak, quarter by quarter. So her reaction was shocked to the answer. We don't have a plan for 1 year, but I looked at her on Zoom. We were on Zoom, and I said, this is fantastic. She said, are you crazy? Why fantastic? I said, it is fantastic because that means you are going to map it out as you think is appropriate. So this tells you have the space to show what you're capable of, instead of a strategy that maybe they just mapped out for the heck of the interview and there's nothing, you know, concrete behind it. But also, particularly at the end of an interview, guys, how will you know? This is a question. How will you know that this plan has worked out? Ask them. How do you know that this new function, this new market, this new product, this new cyber security solution is working? What are your KPIs? What's your scorecard? So throw it at them before they throw it at you. And very often, they won't have an answer, which already will tell you, A, can you make a difference in that company? Because you probably have the answer. But also, B, do you want to work in that culture? Which is even more important. Moving on, at the end, something I always recommend and not many people do is the following. And you can do this in Zoom with or without pandemic. You want a follow-up to this interview. You want the role. Let's assume you want the role. So it is really essential, and it's a unique selling point, to ask to be introduced to some colleagues. Maybe you're not interviewing with your future boss, ask to meet them, either on Zoom or face-to-face whenever it is possible, because this shows that you really care about the culture, about the team. You want to get to know the colleagues and the people you will work with and for. This can take different forms. Before COVID, you would ask for, let me come to your offices for a couple of days and sit with the teams. I want to know what they do, how they do it. You offer to sign an NDA, because of course, in those 2 days, you have access to company information, flow of information. And it shows a hell of a lot to an interviewer. It shows you're serious. It shows you're willing to invest 2 of your holidays days, 3 days, to come and do this. It shows it is important for you to know the people you're going to work with and for. It's not just a job in isolation. Again, business acumen, big thinking. And also it will tell you, do you see yourself in that place? One thing is to do it via Zoom or on a phone call or in a room with one interviewer. But even more important is to do this with a bunch of people over 48 hours. I had a student recently who went for 3 days with social distancing and the rest of it, paid by the future company, not by him, because I also said that you need to be willing to take the cost, to cover the cost if they are not set up. But in that case, they offered him, don't worry, we're going to take, in that case was taking a train. We're going to take care of the cost and, 2 nights in an hotel, but unfortunately there's a lot of social distancing in the office, so you can't meet the whole team. We need to do sub teams. Amazing, because this student came out of the 2 days and said, Prof, now I do know this is a company I can see myself in. I like the work, I like the ambient, I like the feel of the place. People, of course, can always change. You might land a job and tomorrow the boss has flown out. That happens as well. But it's really a unique selling point to propose this. Last but not least, we are coming to the end of this follow-up. Now, just like at interviewing, most of us suck at follow-ups. And this is a weak point that many of us have. And it's such a pity because after all the efforts of finding the interview, landing one, preparing for it, going through it, then we tend to be paralyzed at follow-ups. Why? Well, I'm waiting for them to call me. I don't want to disturb. They never pick up the phone. What shall I say? I mean, I called them for a follow-up. What do I say? To whom do I say what? Not my style. I'm more the guy or the person who, sits back and waits for a call. I called, I send an email, they never answer, and that's it. We leave it at that. And then I become one of the hundreds or one of the 10 or 15 they are interviewing. However, I would like to offer the opportunity to play this a little bit differently. And what is important is that we call, we Zoom, we propose, we email, and we thank them for what the person or the people have done up to now in that interview for us without being intrusive. Now, there is a fine line, again, that shows professionalism and maturity between bombarding someone with calls and never receiving a call back, or picking the right time and moment to place a phone call or a WhatsApp message if you already have that type of relationship, or an email that is properly created and written so that it generates an answer. There is a fine line. This is work, it's hard work. I myself as well, when I have interviewed for jobs in my life, often I got no answer in the follow-up but the difference is I never gave up. And this is where we also see as interviewer, those who give up, and we will never call them back, and those who don't give up and keep on finding ways to get back into an interview mode, opening new doors, a follow-up, offering to come back, offering to meet new people, etc., without crossing the line of being intrusive and a pain in the neck, so to speak. Now we come to the final moment of this webinar, which is around the so-called personal branding, which I prefer to call personal reputation. And I invite all of you, just like I invite myself on a daily basis, because this is not a one-off. This is a life journey. It's like learning. We are never done. To think long and hard about your brand. What is it that you stand for? And what is it that you want the world to know you stand for? Because this is, when I teach branding, in particular, one of my specialties is luxury branding. A brand is a promise of excellence, is a promise of value, delivered every time, every day. This is what branding is all about in very simple form. You can buy tons of books on personal branding. Most of them are anyway rubbish, intellectually not very stimulating. What is really important to do is that you become aware that you stand for something. as a person, as a father, as a spouse, as a daughter, as a professional. We stand for something. What I stood for when I was in my early 20s is very different than what I stand for now. First of all, because I keep learning. Second, because there is a process called aging, which tends to also gives us some wisdom. We don't get gray hair for nothing, as they say. So branding evolves as we go through the phases of life. So a promise of excellence and a promise of value. Therefore, please be professional and keep your brand professional at all times. This starts with your CV, how it is written, your LinkedIn profile, what it says of you. There is a study that was done, I maybe can share it with you, on LinkedIn pictures and the titles, meaning the descriptors of people. It's the funniest study I've ever read, because LinkedIn is such an important professional platform, unfortunately filled with non-professional jargon, pictures, and descriptions. So before you write or rewrite your CV or your LinkedIn profile, be very clear with yourself about what you stand for, because that also means taking a stand on things, right? Do I want to be perceived as a professional marketeer of the future who cares about the circular economy, example, or an investment banker who understands impact investing and ESG investing, another one, or a leader in the oil and gas industry who understands the climate transition, rather than a version of me which doesn't meet the benchmark that I set for myself. Also really important to close today's webinar before I come out, actually I can come out now of my sharing screen so that I see all of you, is that we are clear about the following. This is another point that I work on a lot with my students. A CV is a baseline of us. We end up having multiple versions of the same CV. Why? Because if I send it to a company, an industry, a country, different people, I need to show and highlight different versions of me. I am not lying on any of those CV. I am just highlighting different sides of me. This is the life of a CV. It's never one document and it's never static. The worst thing is on the receiving end to receive a document which looks like the same is going to be sent to everybody. It's really, in the bin immediately. The LinkedIn profile tends to stay more stable, meaning I don't change a LinkedIn profile every week, but I could change my CV every week if I am, for instance, going through a round of interviews, or I have met a bunch of people, I was at a conference, and now all of a sudden I have 3 avenues for jobs. So there are professional CV writers, don't use them, because normally these are people who have no idea of your industry and you. There are a couple I have met in my life who are really good. And at times when the students really want to work with someone professional, but it's a paid service, I recommend to do it if everything we offer at HALT and my own services don't seem to be enough. But what is important is that we stop the game of changing LinkedIn profiles. LinkedIn is very powerful. The eyes of recruiters are on LinkedIn. It's cheap and cheerful. In the past, we used to pay headhunters to do this. And even headhunters screen candidates on LinkedIn. So please ensure there is nothing on those pages that can give away parts of your life that shouldn't become public. And I say this particularly coming from technology. There are all kinds of ways to do, a digital background check on people today. And I know there is always a discussion between, yes, but there is a line between me, the professional, and me, the private person. If I want to have my Facebook page and I'm wearing a bikini across the beaches of the world, it's my business. And my answer is, yes, it is. And it's absolutely your right to do it. However, be mindful of the fact that companies can access that information very easily. So the question is, does that information, images-wise, fit your personal reputation? Does it help the the reputation you're building, which is a lifelong game. In my life, beyond love and health, which are the two most important things I have, number 3 is my reputation. I care about that more than I care about anything else, beyond love and health. Why? Because it is the door opener for everything I do. And my reputation is important. So I spend a lot of time happily ensuring my students build a reputation that is up to their expectations and to their dreams. And with this, I conclude. So I will be very happy on this platform or later on to take your questions. I will share this presentation, first of all, with Jacqueline, and she will ensure that everybody has it. At the end of this presentation, there are my contact details, my email address, my WhatsApp number, my mobile number. You can contact me at any time. But for the last few minutes, is there any particular thought or question in your mind on the fly, so to speak? Or everything clear so far?
There is a question in the chat around, it says here, without digging deep, what would an example of a USP outside of the resume, just one? Not an easy question.
So meaning USP in terms of a way of positioning yourself beyond the specifics of a job you're applying for, Lynette, is that the question?
Absolutely, yeah, that's the question.
Lots. For instance, everything that builds around showing that you care about society, that you care about the community, that you care about the environment. And I'm not just talking, oh, well, I'm a volunteer and I recycle plastic. We all expect that we have that behavior, right, in today's world. I'm talking more about, for instance, a few years ago, I decided that every month I would work for a weekend with my local community or in a local school, and I would help students to learn English. Example, right? Why is this important? Because whether you are in finance, HR, marketing, supply chain strategy, inside a company, these are the issues that you're dealing with. We live in context. We live in context. So I cannot expect you as a professional to care about delivering sustainable value to society as well as to investors. And then I don't see that in your private life and private time, you live by those values. There would be a mismatch, right? It would be like, you know, being all on sustainable value creation, which is, by the way, the definition of corporate purpose when I work. But then on my private time, I don't care about the community. I couldn't care less if people have nothing to eat down my door because I'm well off and I can have my meal. So I need to create a persona, which is a real one. I'm not asking to lie because people can find out whether you are doing it or not. Also important is every training or every learning opportunity that you have created for yourself that has nothing to do with business. Because again, companies need diversity of thinking, and diversity of thinking also means diversity of backgrounds. You know what? I attended a course around, I don't know, the new COVID vaccine that is going on, and I learned everything about the struggle of healthcare and how do you take commercially a vaccine from A to Z. It shows broadness of thinking. And if an interviewer doesn't appreciate that, Lynette, it's already telling you they're narrow-minded. If we go back to the questions we looked at the beginning, we want people who understand the big picture of the world. We live in an extremely complex environment. And therefore, we want to hire people who understand and passionately care about the struggles of our society. And that also shows with what you do when you're not working. By the way, in the past, excellent question. Thank you for asking this, Lynette. In the past, it used to be very taboo, for instance, even to say, you know, about sports or yoga or whatever physical activity one would do, because, oh, well, ooh, you're going to take time off. Are you going at 6 o'clock? No, you're staying here until 8 p.m. Well, now we know that burnout is a real problem in business. particularly in certain industries. So candidates that understand and are highly aware of the balance that they need to maintain between mind, body, heart, and overall mental wellness are important. Why? Because if you get sick, you're a cost to me, number one. Number two, I've got a moral responsibility vis-a-vis you. And number three, as a leader who goes in burnout is not a good leader for anybody, right? So by showing that you are aware that you need a balance in your life, that doesn't mean you're not available 24/7. Of course, we all know business is global. We need to be on call, so to speak, but we know where to draw the line. That's the key. And this is appreciated nowadays. In the past, it was taboo. This has changed. I've seen it changing year by year. What else do we have in the, so thank you, Lynette, for that. Shadi is asking, I prefer to wear a suit without a tie. Is that okay? Yes, that is okay. I mean, and here you need to be smart, and I know, Dan, you are, in terms of having the sense, the feeling of the place you're going into. Number one, the culture and country. In many cultures and countries, you gotta wear a tie. In others, you don't. And if that is what is happening around you, but you are still elegant and classy, don't wear it. The last thing you want is to show up because you don't feel confident. You wouldn't perform well by definition. It's like if I would go and wear something I don't feel comfortable in, I will not perform. I know myself. I need to feel okay in what I'm wearing to give the best of me. What else do we have? Yes, Shadi is saying, I feel it makes me more approachable. Again, make it contextual. So which country, which job, which sector, at which point in time in the year, that's also important, you know, and adapt it to what you're seeing. You know, look up these people you're meeting. Are they, you know, are there pictures of them on Google, or can you find them? At times I had a student who went to sit at the Starbucks in front of the office. He was going to have an interview in, you know, the following week, and literally saw people going in and out to check the attire. It was an amazing piece of research, but, you know, an important one. So Dan is asking, I'm sorry to leave. Okay, that's fine. You were asking about personal aspect on LinkedIn. Yes, if you, the general rule is that LinkedIn is a professional platform. You don't write about your private life. You don't write about your children's life. You don't write about your love life. And you also don't write about your health. Now, some people use it as a campaign sort of tool for certain causes, well-intended normally, but it doesn't taste well in the overall purpose of what LinkedIn serves as a platform. So there are other ways to fight battles for just or good causes in the world, not through LinkedIn. Yeah, so keep it professional. Any other question, guys? Otherwise, we can close it here. All good? Okay, so Jacqueline, from my side, it was an absolute pleasure. As I said, I will share the slides. You will have my contact details. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm a very approachable person, so I will be very happy to give you, you know, the wisdom of the day if I have one to give. You can WhatsApp me, you can email, and then we can continue this conversation for the success that you deserve.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Selina. It's much appreciated. I hope everybody found the session useful, and we will be sharing the recording on Academic Essentials. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care of yourself. Bye. Bye-bye.